Welcome back to Wrestling Travel Presents the Lockdown Sessions. Today, we are here with Wisconsin wrestler Gunnar Wixx. Gunnar, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Gunnar, you are joining us from the great state of Wisconsin, one that is very close to my heart. You are a member of Brew City Wrestling, is that correct?
Yep, that's correct.
How long have you been in the business, Gunnar?
So I've been training for just over a year. I think like a year and 3 months or something like that. Started doing matches just under a year. I think my first one was like in July, if I remember correctly. So yeah, pretty short, pretty new.
Well, so you're coming up on what would have been your 1 year anniversary.
Yep.
Now, here's the big question. With the pandemic, you missed a couple of months. Did you get in on the show on the 20th?
The Outslot show?
The last show that you guys, because that was, you guys had a show on the 20th. Was that the first show after the pandemic, right?
Yep, first BCW show, yep.
You were in on that.
Yep. So triple threat tag team match. Yep.
So you didn't miss too much. I'm like, I guess we can still call it your 1 year. I don't want to be like Vince, where you get an injury and I extend all your time there. So we'll call it 1 year in the business. That's fantastic. So you obviously trained at the, I don't want to steal your thunder. I guess I'll ask you, where did you start training?
Thumper's Den in Milwaukee with Frankie DeFalco and Beer City Bruiser. Started training there. First time ever doing any type of wrestling type training. Never thought I'd be able to do it, but here we are a year later, and it's been a blast so far.
That first day, it changes you, doesn't it? That first day in training where you're like, kind of want to do this, but I'm not really sure what the ins and outs of it are. And I remember going home after my first day going, okay. Because I thought I knew it.
Uh-huh. And
then I got to training and I was like shitting myself, really nervous. Going, maybe I don't know what's going to happen. And then you
been close to that a couple times. But I was pretty dedicated and knew I wanted to do it when I first came in. I just didn't know. I knew it'd be difficult, but not how. I didn't know how hard it would be. But yeah, it's definitely a big wake-up call. Got blown up super quickly at the beginning. Much better about that now. But yeah, it was intense, but it's fun. So I keep doing it.
Did an interview earlier today with Vince Valor, a wrestler out of Niagara Falls, New York. We were talking about getting blown up in the ring. There was a time I wrestled down in Milwaukee. We had a ring set up outside, and it's 80, 90 degree week like we've had this week.
Okay.
And we went there every day, 2 hours running around, doing stuff. We'll run a whole match. Okay, we'll take a water break, do it again. No problem in the hot sun. Got inside the building that week, and I was blown up in about 3 minutes. There's something about being in front of the crowd. Get that nervous. I was like, how in the world could I do this 80, 90 degrees outside, and now we're just in front of a crowd of maybe a few hundred people, and I am blown up. So, when you're a young Gunnar Wixx, you'll recognize this question because I ask everybody. What's the first thing you see on TV, pro wrestling? Who do you see? Who gets you the itch?
So my first memory of pro wrestling was I had to be pretty young, probably like 4 years old. It was the Hell in a Cell match between Undertaker and Shawn Michaels, where Kane interfered and ripped down the door. It's the first match I ever saw, and Kane is my favorite wrestler.
Yeah, that was where I was going to go next.
Yeah, closely followed by The Undertaker. They're pretty much on the same level for me. But, yeah, that was my first time watching it, and I've been hooked ever since.
How tall are you?
6'3".
Okay, I was going to say, you look like a bigger dude, kind of a Kane. And normally you got a little makeup on, I know. I know during the pandemic you haven't had to put it on, so you got kind of that. You got that look. I was going through some pictures and everything through your bio here before we did it, doing my journalistic responsibilities here. So Kane's your favorite wrestler. With Bruce City, now you've already got Frankie DeFalco, who
Yep.
may not be, people don't realize maybe outside of the state, but Frankie's been doing it at a high level for a long time. Beer City Bruiser with Ring of Honor. So you've already got some great teachers in there. Did you come in with like a class of people, or is camp constantly running?
It's constantly running. I think there was like maybe 2 other new people around when I started, but they're not doing it no more. And then since then, there's a lot of people that come and go. But yeah.
People watch it on TV and go, "I can do this," and then you get in there and it's not.
Yep.
Let's put it this way: it's never what you think it is.
Yep. I think a lot of people, I don't know if they just think it's easy, or I'm not sure what their expectations are going into it, but it's definitely a difficult thing to do. And if you don't love it, it'll chew you up and spit you out pretty quickly.
I think the expectations of the public is, hey, this is all, they use the F word. This isn't real. I can do blah, blah, blah. And then, man, pro wrestling will hit you in the face harder than anything.
Sure will, yeah. It some of this stuff definitely doesn't feel fake, I can tell you that much.
No, that's the thing. I had so many injuries. You want to tell me how I faked that, or when it used to be okay to get kind of hit in the head with a chair? You probably haven't had that too much, and you probably,
but sure, it's a little different.
Yeah, and then you probably were taught to protect yourself a little bit better. But
yep.
Yeah, I'm like, dude, one of the best things I ever had injury-wise was somebody hit me with a sheet pan. So stupid. You want to hit somebody with the flat part. I got a sheet pan right here in the elbow.
Oh, really?
The pain that goes up your arm, and then the non-feeling in your hand and pain. I mean, that was one of the worst. I mean, I've torn my knee, and this was so much worse, just from people not thinking. So Bruce City brings in a lot of there's a lot of talent that comes in and out of there. A lot of names besides like the Beer City Bruiser. Have you gotten a chance? I'm sure you've got a chance to be on some cards with some bigger names. Can you tell us who they were?
Bigger names, just like out of the Milwaukee area, or just in general?
In general.
So far, I think more of the bigger guys I've met, Rhino, he's a pretty cool dude. Hornswoggle, obviously, he's from Wisconsin. Kelly Klein, she punched me in the face once. That was sweet. Yeah.
What's that story? Is this storyline?
So when I first started, I was, I guess, a manager for Sierra before I first started doing matches. And she had a match against her at the Wisconsin State Fair, I think it was. And I don't remember exactly what went down, but I think I interfered somehow, and she just popped me in the face and put me in my place. So
put you up a little bit, huh? That's awesome.
Yep.
How about now, besides Kane? Kane's your favorite wrestler. And you're very young and new into this business, so I understand that this list could be a mile long. Can you give me a handful, 2 or 3 people that, hey, these are some, and this could be anybody from, state competitors to some big time names that you've looked up to. Can you give me a handful of names that you'd hope to step in the ring with in the future?
That's rough. I feel like a lot of the names are very unrealistic. Something that I hope happens again is I hope I get in the ring with a Beer City Bruiser another time. Yeah. He was my first match ever, which was quite the experience, and I feel like I've progressed a lot since then, because that was roughly a year ago, so it'd be super fun to do something with him again. Otherwise, just like a lot of the WWE guys would be sweet. Currently, I'm a big fan of Seth Rollins. I like his whole Monday Night Messiah gimmick. It's pretty cool. But, yeah, really just getting in there with anybody is fun, learning different things. And everyone has different styles, and you learn something each time. So Yeah, really anyone.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying that's a tough question to answer when you're a year in, because you're like, man, just put me in with anybody. I'd
Yep.
love to. And then it gets tougher when you're a veteran. You're like, I don't want to leave anybody off this list because there's a lot of people. One thing that you've probably realized very quickly, and one thing I'm quick to point out, is Wisconsin has a pretty deep talent pool. I don't know how far you probably haven't ventured outside of Brew City, but I just went down to a show in Green Bay last weekend where there was kind of like the who's who of Wisconsin indie wrestling, and it's very deep. So you're in it with a pretty big class. Now, have you wrestled? You probably wrestled right in Brew City. You haven't ventured out yet, correct?
I have a little bit. So I've wrestled at ICW. I was at ACW once. UTL, which is up north a little ways. I've been to Minneapolis once, Michigan a couple times, and yeah, I think that's about it.
That's for having a year into the business, plus getting a couple months taken off from the coronavirus. That's a pretty big list there of getting over to Minnesota and up to UTL.
To get out there and new experiences, learn new stuff. So I'm always down to jump in the car with some of the dudes and venture out.
That's the cool thing too about local indie wrestling is those car rides and your chance to shut your mouth and listen.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. What do you what's the best advice that you've gotten so far in pro wrestling?
That's tough. I've gotten tons of advice. Probably just to take everything slowly. Things come with time. I think it was Beer City Bruiser that told me that. It's just a lot of, and Dan Perch. I listen to him a lot. He's a wealth of knowledge too. But just you want to be good, and you want to be good quickly, and that doesn't really work that way. Lots of repetition, lots of practice will get you there, but and it can get really frustrating at times. But I think the biggest advice is just to slow down, learn a little bit every day. You don't have to be good overnight, and eventually you'll get there.
Yeah, even when you think you're going too slow it down. You hear that, and then you go in the ring, and you're not slow at all right afterwards, especially when you're young. Because I feel like it's just like learning any sport. Somebody's going to give you that advice, and you think, okay, slow down. And then one thing I always watch when I go to a match or if I go to a training camp is I always watch people's feet. You can tell.
A lot of people have happy feet. Yep.
Yeah, whoever's taken the least amount of steps to get from point A to point B, that's one of the biggest things I've learned, and the biggest piece of advice I always give if somebody kind of asks my opinion. Rarely do they ever ask it, and rarely do I give it, but it's always, man, keep an eye on the feet in the ring. Sometimes I'll go and I'll just see from like an ankle down and go, okay, I could tell black boots has been doing it for a lot longer than white boots. So what was it a big decision to make to go, hey, I'm dedicating myself, I want to get into pro wrestling? Because I would assume that from being a young child to I know you went over to my rival's school there because I see the flag in the background. So that's quite a bit away from Thumper's Den.
Yep.
So I assume that after college, then you kind of made the decision to kind of go ahead.
So it was obviously, like I think everybody, it was always a big dream of mine, being a little kid watching it on TV and stuff. I'm from Waupun, Wisconsin originally, and Brew City ran a show there once during the summer when I was home from college, and that was my first indie wrestling show ever and first BCW show. And afterwards, I always wanted to get into wrestling, never thought I would be able to do it. I was like, hey, I should give this a try, whether I quit after a week or whether I'm able to do this for a long time. At least if I give it 100% of my effort, I'd know one way or the other. Like, you don't want to go through life thinking what if. So that's when I kind of made the decision then, but I still had like a year of school left. So I went through school, moved back to this area, got a job, and then signed up for wrestling school. So I worked my typical 9 to 5, Monday through Friday job, and then training after that. But yeah, something I always wanted to do for a long time. Didn't think I'd be able to do it. I'm glad it's been going as good as it has so far.
That's great. Now you mentioned Waupun. That name is notorious in Wisconsin. Have you, the McDonald's there? Have you visited it?
Many times.
All right. So you know the story I'm talking about then, right?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay, this is great. This will be great education for you. So you want to? Oh no, it wasn't Waupun. They ended up going to Waupun. I think maybe it was in Waukesha. Anyway, it's the Ken Patera, Mr. Saito story about them throwing a rock through the McDonald's. But Waupun is where they have a prison in Waupun, right?
Yeah, like 3 of them. Yep, prison
Oh,
city.
okay, that's where I messed up. They went. I thought maybe I'm like, oh, dude, that's the McDonald's where they threw the rock at.
Did you say Waukesha though? Maybe
Might have been Waukesha, maybe.
That's where I live right now. Is in Waukesha.
Oh, okay, perfect. So the entire story, and look it up to make sure I've got everything, is it's after an AWA show, and Ken Patera and Mr. Saito want something to eat, and apparently the McDonald's was just closing and locked the door on them and refused service. They got upset, threw a rock at the window, went back to the hotel, and the cops come and wake them up, and they get into a little fight with the cops. And the next thing I know on my AWA programming, it says that Ken Patera's on an extended tour of Japan. He was in Waupun at the prison there for a year. So,
oh yeah,
Frankie might have that story a lot better than I do. I'm sure Frank. Well, yeah, there's no way Frankie doesn't know that story.
That's funny. I'll have to ask him about that sometime.
You know what you need to ask Frankie? You need to say, Frankie, I did the lockdown sessions. Do you know who would be great on the lockdown sessions? Greg Gagne would be great on the lockdown sessions.
Okay. Yeah. I can mention that to him.
I would just, throw it out
See
there.
if it goes anywhere.
It's probably not gonna, but everybody always asks, what's my favorite wrestler? Yours is Kane. I always say mine is Greg Gagne. I grew up in a different era, only had 3 channels, and Greg Gagne was the man for me. So what has been your favorite city to wrestle in you got to go. I usually wouldn't ask somebody a year in, but getting over to wrestle in Minnesota and up north. Throw out your home city of Brew City down there, but some of the places you travel, what's been a pretty cool city?
Yep, Brew City is definitely the hometown, so always fun and great to be there. Going into Minneapolis was pretty cool. I think as a Live Pro Wrestling was a promotion. They had a pretty neat venue and cool vibe to it, so that was really fun. Long car ride there and back too, so that was also great. Cadillac, Michigan, that was pretty fun. I went there with Bruiser and Dan Perch for a weekend, and that was for UWE. I think that was the promotion. That was also really fun. Just getting out of the norm, even though I guess I haven't really had too much of like a norm yet, but just getting out to different places is always really cool to see how they're set up and how they run things, because everyone does things a little bit differently. But yeah, if I had to pick one, it'd probably be Live Pro Wrestling in Minneapolis.
Yeah, Minneapolis, like talking about the AWA, kind of a historic town for wrestling. And you're right, man, getting away from where you're getting out of your comfort zone is one of the cool things too, going, okay, you might have a little bit of following or a big following in Brew City, but now, okay, I'm going to go over here. And then it's kind of like that measuring stick.
Yep. Yeah, because wrestling in this area for a while, you have eventually people get to know you a little bit, and then you kind of have a gauge of what the crowd reaction might be going somewhere completely different, completely new. It's always cool to see how they react to you.
And how is it now watching and enjoying pro wrestling as you're growing up, and now being that guy at the independent show where you got kids coming up to you and people asking you questions? What does that feel like?
Kind of breaking up.
Yeah, we are having a little technical. Let me know when you can hear that. Are we back?
Oh man, it's still too bad. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you now. You hear me all right?
Now it's good.
Awesome. Hey, we're going to leave that in there. That's live. That's what happens here. I was saying, what's it like now? You've been a fan of pro wrestling since you were a kid, and now you're a wrestler. And what's it like with when you got kids and fans coming up and asking you questions? How does that feel?
It is super weird and probably something I'll never get used to. Insane. It's really insane. Just like when kids want a picture or autograph or something, it's just like, why do you want a picture of me? Like, who am I, right? But it's definitely a cool feeling for sure, and something that can provide a little bit of motivation when you need it. But yeah, it's weird.
But yeah, I think one of the first times I was like, signing a poster, and I'm like, I deliver pizzas. You know what I mean?
I did that too.
Yeah. So now Kane is the obvious one. I'm going to give you some softball questions here. Who would be on your Mount Rushmore of professional wrestling?
My personal Mount Rushmore?
Your personal Mount Rushmore, Gunn or Wixx?
I think Kane, Undertaker, Stone Cold, and probably Ric Flair, maybe. Yeah, go with that.
What did you do between once the COVID pandemic hit, and then you guys had a show on June 20th? What did you do to keep yourself mentally and physically, like, kind of focused on wrestling? What kind of things did you do during the shutdown?
I watched a lot more of it during the shutdown than I normally would, because a lot of the times I'm training instead of actually watching it. So I had a lot more time to sit down and watch a bunch of different things on YouTube and the WWE Network and such. Just trying to stay physically in a decent shape. I bought like a home workout kit. It sucked that all the gyms were closed, but I did that. Just a lot of watching, a little bit of note taking, seeing how different people do different things, and then being like, oh, when I come back, I'm gonna steal that later.
That's the thing. I got to watch a lot more too, and my go-to is, there's so many moves, if you look back 80s, 70s, that are not used anymore, that I rarely see.
Mm-hmm.
Vince Valor from Niagara, I was talking to him, I'm like, I rarely see an atomic drop anymore. And he said one of the guys he works with does an atomic drop every match. I'm like, well, there you go. But I don't see the abdominal stretch, the Russian leg sweep, and stuff like that. All things that, I'm old, but I always think, man, somebody could take these. You wrestle a big man gimmick, I'm assuming. Anyway,
Yep.
There's all kinds of stuff that you can take in that almost, probably like life and history, recycles itself, becomes what's old becomes new again. So what era do you find yourself concentrating on, that 90s era when you're catching up on stuff?
I try to get a little bit of everything. For sure, my favorite era is like the Attitude Era, because that's what I first started watching, and just like the rawness and the intensity of everything going on in that time. Big fan of. I do keep up with the current stuff going on, but otherwise I do like a lot of the older, like 70s, 80s type matches too. So pretty fun to watch.
Did you get a chance to watch a lot of Frankie and the Bruiser?
Yep, I've seen, not a ton. I've seen a few of Bruiser's and Frankie's matches. It's fun watching them, and then knowing that they're the guys that are training you, helping you get better. And then Bruiser was trained by Harley Race too, so having like that wealth of knowledge from him passing through onto you is pretty cool. But yeah, watching those guys are fun.
What was that crowd like that first time back? Now, you went without wrestling for a while. I just went to a WPW show in Green Bay, and the crowd was everything I expected it to be, because we'd been without live entertainment, not just wrestling, for so long, that they were giving 120%. What was that crowd like on June 20th? Intense?
Yeah, they were fun. They were loud. It's everything I was kind of expecting it to be, I think. And got some cool pops in the match, which were pretty fun. It's kind of hard when you're in there, though. For me, I can listen to the crowd during my entrance and after, but sometimes when you get in the middle of the stuff, it sounds kind of weird, but sometimes you tune that out a little bit, the crowd noise. But it's definitely, they were loud, and it was a good time.
I'd like to get your take, and I'll just give you a few more questions here. I want to be respectful of your time. Being a young guy in the business, what is your take on the cinematic matches that we've had, like the Boneyard, the Firefly Funhouse?
They're fun. They're entertaining to watch. It's so weird and different than the traditional wrestling match. I hated it at first. The Matt Hardy matches that he kind of started doing at the beginning with the broken gimmick and stuff, wasn't really a big fan of when other people were, but I think I've gotten maybe more used to it over time. Really big fan of the Undertaker Boneyard match with AJ Styles. That was fun. But completely different vibe, and it's jarring going from a live match in the ring to something that's, edited and all thought out and pre-recorded well. But I'm still a big fan of traditional wrestling more so than the cinematic stuff, but that's fun to watch from time to time.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same. No, you make sense to me, because I hated it, and I wanted to hate it, and then I realized, okay, we're in the middle of a global pandemic. What else could they give us? So at least it wasn't like the NBA and baseball where we got nothing. So I'm like, all right, I'll go with it. I just hope we get back to normal, where that's just one of those. The one thing I thought was harder than that, because I always think of like the greatest match ever that they just did, and they recorded it. Now I'm hearing snippets that Edge said they only cut a couple spots in there. But I always think if there was the greatest match ever, which I always go back to something like, Steamboat and Flair, Steamboat and Savage. I couldn't imagine those matches being like, all right, cut, take a break.
I know, right?
So I posed this question to one of my colleagues, and they said, if this is going to be what makes the greatest match ever, what do you have to have in it? You have to have like 19 2 counts, how many false finishes? And if that is formulaic, then can I really have the best match ever with anybody? What I try to compare it to is Bill Belichick. Is Tom Brady the greatest quarterback ever, or is he a product of the system? So that's what that's me going off on a COVID-19. I've got nothing better to think about tangent, but I always wonder that. Did that have to be Edge and Orton? Could I throw anybody in there and got the best match ever if it's formulaic? I certainly think that we're going to find that there was a lot, once things get back to normal, that we're going to find out, hey, there's a lot of stuff I missed because it's hard to watch without fans, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's good being a wrestler and studying something like that, like learning from matches like that. It's cool not having fans there, but just for entertainment purposes and watching, live crowd is way better.
When Kevin Owens jumped off the sign at WrestleMania, I was like, dude, that was more impressive to me than anything, because live crowd, you got all that adrenaline. Now he's got nothing and he's still jumping off. I thought that was pretty fantastic. So I see you got a Gunnar Wixx shirt on. Where can we get a Gunnar Wixx shirt? Where can we follow you if I'm a wrestling fan? What social media platforms are you using? How do we get the latest? We want to follow Gunnar Wixx and on your young career, and follow you till you get in the ring with Kane here one day.
Oh, I wish that'd be amazing. But pro wrestling tees.com/GunnerWixx. That's where you can get one of these fancy shirts. Then my name is the same across all social media. So it's all Gunner Wixx, lowercase, GUNNERWIXX. That's that way for Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. I think that's all of them.
TikTok's a new one. We got any Gunner Wixx dances going on TikTok?
No, definitely not. Me and some of the other guys filmed this cool video where we had a ball of wrist tape, and we'd be in our normal selves doing whatever, and then we'd catch the wrist tape and put it on and switch into our gimmick and then pass it to the next guy. So we got one of those videos on there that's pretty cool. But yeah, no dancing from Gunner on TikTok or anywhere else for that matter.
You know who's getting close to dancing on there is Frankie.
Oh yeah, he loves it.
He's getting close. So, all righty. Any last words then? We want to thank you for joining us. But Gunner, any last words for our fans watching across the world?
Just thanks for watching. Thanks for having me on. It's been fun. Hopefully we get a chance to do something similar down the road when my career's progressed a little bit. But yeah, had a fun time. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for spending time with us. I'd love to get together with you when we're back to normal and not doing a lockdown session, but we're talking active wrestling, what's going on. So, all righty. For Gunner Wixx, this is JC from Wrestling Travels signing off for this week's lockdown session.